Hi, my name is Sonja Vilicic. I'm Jewish educator and activist, and I live in Serbia. I will talk a little bit about Parshat Shoftim. Parshat Shoftim we translate as judges. Actually, Shoftim we translate as judges, and it's a parasha that consists of a lot of laws, legal, religious, and governmental laws, and it talks about justice, or bringing justice to the people, bringing justice to your surrounding. I chose to concentrate on two parts of this parasha. The first part is really the beginning of the parasha and the words that Moses told the people in the beginning of parasha. And the second part that I will concentrate on is about establishing a monarchy and what does it mean in Jewish terms. What is the role of the king and what is the power of the king. So the parasha starts with the following words. Judges and officers shall you appoint in all your gates that the Lord your God gives you, according to your tribes, and they shall govern people with justice. So when I read this one sentence, let's say, I have more questions than explanations. So I would like to offer my questions and the questions that I'm struggling with and thinking about when I read this one sentence. So one question would be, it says that judges and officers you shall appoint. So one question would be, what is the difference between judge and the officer? What are their roles? Can they function without each other? Can they fulfill their job, their mission without each other? And who are the judges and officers today in our lives? The second question that I have when I read this sentence is why does each tribe need a judge? What can I read from it and how I can relate that to nowadays? So if we say that the tribes share the common history, they share the common religion and belief, if I connect it to today, we can say the Jewish people share religion, they share certain amount of similar belief. But what I see in the practice is that not each tribe, however you define it to nowadays, not each tribe is equally represented. And I think this passage of Torah is actually talking about that we are one people, but we have our differences, and our differences should be represented in our wider Jewish community. The last question that come to me when I read this opening of this parasha is actually, what is justice? And why justice is important to humanity, or in this case, why justice is also important to God. And I asked the question, maybe the last question that unfortunately I know the answer is, do we live in a just world? And what we can do and learn from this passage about it. I think the last question is somehow connected also to the second point of this parasha that I would like to talk about, and it's about leadership, or in this sense it's about establishing a monarchy or having a king. And I feel if my last question was, do we live in a just world, I think we are able to live in a just world if we just listen to the words of Torah regarding who should be our king, or who should be our leader, and how the power should be distributed and should not be kept one by one person or figure, or however you want to call it. So if we think about the king, that I will read the instructions of what should king actually not be, and what we expect from the king. We can also read from Torah that the power is actually divided among the king, the priest, and the prophet. Actually, the king came in the end. So first there were priests and prophets, and then the king came, and each role has a different responsibility. And Torah is telling us that you can't actually lead, you can't have absolute power. There is no absolute power on earth, but the power should be divided. And among your power, you know exactly what you are responsible for. So it's also interesting that that king was chosen in the end, and it was chosen because other nations around people of Israel had kings, and it was actually the influence of outside on the decision in Torah, which is the only place that it happened. Usually Torah advises us, or Torah give us advice that we should distinguish ourselves from other nations. So we shouldn't do certain things that other nations do, and to have a king is the decision or the commandment that actually came from the pressure of people of Israel, and as they used the model of people that were surrounding them. So it says the following. So first of all, the king needs to be from among your people. So you can't have a foreigner as a king. You can't have a foreigner that will lead you, because your values and your morale and your laws are different than the laws of other nations. And the king, actually it says here what king should not be. And it says it in this way, that the king must not have many horses, which means that many commentary says that it relates to the military. So the king must not have too much military. We know what happens for example, in dictatorship, when you have too much military, and how it affects the people that you're a king of, let's say. Nor the king should have many wives, nor he should multiply his silver and his gold, which means that it's all about the balance. So king should have horses, he should have a wife or two wives in this time, or maybe even a little bit more, and he should have some silver and gold, but he should not have it too much of it, because that's not the purpose why he is a king. To exercise the extreme power, or to get rich because of his position. Okay? His purpose is very, very different. And it's also, we know from the biblical times, but we also know today that these things are very temptations, which means that it's very hard to resist them. And also the Bible or Torah offers the example of King Solomon, who was the wisest king of all the kings, but still he had too many wives and he was too rich. So a little bit he lost the focus a little bit. What I find most fascinating from this paragraph or description of kings, and how related to the leadership, authority or power, and what Judaism has to say about it, I read in the next few lines. And it says, "Also it shall be, when he sits on the throne of his kingdom, that he shall write for himself a copy of this law in a book," meaning a copy of Torah, "from the one before the priests, the Levites. And it shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear the Lord his God, and be careful to observe all the words of this law and these statutes, that his heart may not be lifted above his brethren, that he may not turn aside from the commandment to the right hand or to the left, and that he may prolong his days in his kingdom, he and his children in the midst of Israel." So what this passage actually is telling us about the kings, or the figure of leadership, how Judaism understands it, that first of all, kings should not be above the people, that kings should be reminded and learn and continue to learn the words of Torah, and that king in this sense should not think that because he is a king, he is the smartest, or he is above everything, but actually he should remind himself that he can constantly learn and constantly develop himself, but also he should remind himself about his purpose. Why is he a king? He's not a king for himself, but he's a king in order to serve the people. And when I think about these beautiful words and actually the code of a leader, or the codex of behavior of a leader. I really wish that our world leaders, or our country leaders, or even our Jewish community leaders sit with these words and read these words and learn these words, because unfortunately many times I feel that the position that people put these people into, if we talk about the president or president of our communities, is many times misunderstood and abused. And I really hope that that our leaders will have a chance to learn and use this as their codex of behavior. I wish you Shabbat Shalom.